Kyle Hightower of the AP joins me now. And Kyle, skirmishes at training camp, particularly when you've got two teams that are common, but what we've seen in consecutive days with the Patriots and Panthers is a little bit unusual. Can you start by kind of detailing what is going on there?
Yeah, so on the first day of joint practices, we had two different incidents, 5 different players ejected from practice. You think kind of just some, tempers kind of flared, things got kind of a little heated, you think nothing of it. But then yesterday, the same thing, 2 more skirmishes, one involving the same player for the Panthers, Kenny Robinson, involved with the Patriot players. The second incident spilled out into the stands. A fan was actually injured in that incident, minor injuries, but injured nonetheless. And got to a point to where Matt Rule even said that one more incident would have canceled practice. And that's something that neither coach, obviously, in the preseason and taking advantage of these joint practice situations wants to happen. But definitely, tempers were raised. You wonder if it's just issues between those players in particular or something greater. But these teams do not meet this season, so I guess we won't find out if that kind of spills over, kind of carries over. But definitely an unusual and abnormal incident, even for preseason joint practices.
And as far as the female fan that was injured, all signs, like you said, pointing that she's going to be okay, that this was just kind of a minor result?
Yes, thankfully. For what we understand, the Patriots, obviously sent medical attention over there to her. She refused it. And then they actually offered her, to do some, kind of courtesy things, free tickets, to try to make her feel, as safe and as comfortable with what happened as possible. But she seemed to be that way. It didn't seem to be a major incident, kind of a bruised foot, not minor injury, thankfully, because obviously you don't want to see anybody hurt in these situations. Dietrich Wise from the Patriots, who's actually involved in the incident, I've heard, has actually reached out to her, which she obviously appreciated and stuff. So, again, it's something that kind of got out of hand, and thankfully nobody was hurt, which is the most important thing.
Where should the line be at training camp when you've got joint practices with teams who are obviously anxious to get the season started, who want to be more physical than they've been over the course of the offseason? How much is too much?
Well, they've cut back. Obviously they've cut back from 4 preseason games to 3. So I think there's a rush kind of for the players and the coaching staff to kind of speed things up. And I think that's one thing that, has kind of gotten lost in the trying to, to take the physical burden off the players in the preseason. The natural kind of tendency there is they're going to try to stuff as much as they can into the shorter window. So I think that's something that maybe needs to be addressed going forward. And one thing I didn't mention before is, Christian Wilkerson for the Patriots, the first incident, kind of took a hard tackle from a player and was kind of taunted by a Panthers player. That kind of started the incident. And, again, that's the kind of thing where, players just kind of, again, just spirits kind of revved up. Players are trying to get themselves, mentally and physically prepared for the season. It shows that, there's a kind of a rush to get that intensity to going. And again, that's something that maybe need to be addressed in the offseason. That even if you try to, increase player safety, you try to limit kind of the exposure to players in the preseason, kind of on their bodies and just mentally, that there are kind of trade-offs. And that's something that maybe need to be addressed, and maybe just stress the point from coaches and the players that, you've got this one less preseason game, but you can still take your time to, kind of rev things up. And I think maybe you may even see teams cut back on the joint practices they have. Most teams have about 2 in the preseason window. Maybe that's cut back to 1. We'll see what happens.
That's a great point, and something that I didn't think about until you brought it up just now, which is this notion that, the NFL can't have it all. Right. I mean, they are such a multi-billion-dollar business. They want to add as many games to the regular season as possible. They want to make as much money as possible. There are repercussions to all of this. There are physical repercussions to the players having a shortened preseason and from jamming additional games into the regular season, and all these things that the league, in earnest or otherwise, is trying to do to maximize the value of a regular NFL season. Have we not seen, I guess, the full extent of what that means as it relates to player health and safety and getting ready for the regular season?
Yeah, I don't think we have. I mean, because, again, this is entering the second season, as you say, of an extended regular season, 17 games. We're going to see how that plays out. We're watching the injuries and watching how many games and how much time, guys missed this season, just as we were last year. And again, this kind of intense, this increased kind of intensity here in the preseason we've seen, not just with the Panthers, the Patriots. We've seen other incidents around the league, obviously, and that's something that we probably shouldn't dismiss as kind of just one-off situation. That's something that's going to need to be taken a closer look at. And and again, as you say, there's a lot of money at play. Players want to get paid. They don't want to have that one less. They don't play one more game for one less game check. Obviously, there's been some safety measures kind of instituted even this preseason again with the Guardian caps, how the funny kind of Mario Bros looking kind of helmets the guys are patting the guys are wearing on their helmets to kind of protect their heads, but that's going to be gone during the regular season, of course. You're not going to have the guys wearing that during the regular season. So there's again a kind of a tug of war, a push and pull of yes, we want to show and really do have a commitment to safety, but also to you don't want to lose, that kind of, as you say, that big trade of money that's been rushing to NFL for years is only going to keep going up as years go by.
That's great insight. So as far as the game that they're scheduled to play on Friday is still going to happen, right? I mean, what do you expect to them meet?
It is going to happen. I mean, guys are still battling for roster spots, so that is going to happen. There's obviously a quarterback battle going on in Carolina. With Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, which is going to, have get a lot of attention and decisions to be made there. So they're going to play. The Patriots, didn't play their starters in the first preseason game. They're going to play those in this preseason game. So guys that do have a lot of are going to have a lot of say in both team seasons are going to be on the field this Friday. And some of the guys that were involved in those incidents are going to be on the field. Not sure about Kenny Robinson. Again, he was involved in multiple incidents over those 2 days for the Panthers. But guys who were involved and who were on the field for those incidents will be on the field on Friday. So it is a backdrop. It's something to watch, and I'm sure if something happens, we'll be all over it. But again, just an abnormal incident you would think, but then it happened 2 straight days, and now it's become kind of a storyline to watch, not just for these 2 teams, but for the NFL overall.
As you think about the storylines that you're going to be paying attention to outside of this kind of consecutive days of these 2 teams going at it, what are you most focused on offensively and defensively as it relates to the Patriots? What are some of the bigger question marks that may be, if not answered on Friday, at least you might gain some additional insight into some positional battles and obviously how Mac Jones is continuing to develop and perform heading into this season?
Yeah, well, speaking of Mac, I think the underlying question for him and for this Patriot offense is, who's calling the plays. Josh McDaniels left to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, be their head coach in the offseason. They left a void there, a hole there for Bill Belichick to fill this offseason. And he officially did not fill it. He didn't, elevate somebody to that official title. He's always been a guy who doesn't really believe in titles, but with the top 2 spots and for the offensive coordinator, it's kind of been somebody who you kind of point to and say who's in control. This year is a little bit different for the offense. Matt Patricia, who has the title of kind of a special assistant, under Belichick, who's coached defense in the past. He's had a big hand in calling plays and kind of been the main play caller and Mac Jones' ear, for most of the preseason. But also Joe Judge, who was, obviously just dismissed from the New York Giants. He's back on Belichick's staff as an offensive assistant, kind of working closely as a quarterback-like coach with Mac Jones. But he's also had a hand in calling plays. They've kind of split time in the first preseason game last week. Again, that's something to be watching with great interest going forward, because you wonder if Bill Belichick can go into the actual regular season with not an official play caller named, and how much that's going to affect a second-year quarterback in Mac Jones, who is entered the league expecting, for the most part, his entire football life has had that kind of structured system where it's been like, this is one guy I can depend on who's going to be in my ear calling plays, and that's not been the case this year. So if and when Bill Belichick names somebody or elevates somebody to that spot, it's going to be something to watch. And his position-wise, I mean, I think that even though Christian Wilkerson, the guy who got hurt, in that skirmish during the joint practices, wasn't necessarily a guy who was going to be in the top of the depth chart in the wide receiver position. There's a lot of guys in the Patriots who are competing for spots to be, in Mac Jones's wheelhouse there. You brought in Devontae Parker. He's been spectacular this preseason and, could be elevated to number 1 type receiver for the Patriots. You bring in a guy like You barely got like Ty Montgomery in the backfield, a running back. He's kind of filled that James White position. He just retired. So a lot of things to watch and see who's going to be filled on the offensive side in particular. And on defense, they're kind of the same thing. You got guys who have been brought in who've shown some productivity, but the Patriots defense has got to find some run stoppers. This team ranked in the bottom third of the league against the run last two seasons actually. And that's been kind of, Achilles heel for them, kind of, a big problem there from the workout. So up front on the defensive line, stopping the run, and on the offense, who's calling the plays and who's Mac Jones throwing to, or two or three of the big things to watch as we go into the regular season.
It's certainly above my pay grade, but I imagine that play calling by committee is probably not the scenario that you would want to have heading into a regular season. If you could guess, and I'm sure it's anybody's guess, I don't want to put you in a tough position, but I mean, is there any feel for how Bill Belichick is ultimately going to decide who's calling the plays? Is there a consensus at least that by the time the regular season arrives, it will be one person calling the plays, or is it truly up in the air?
I mean, I think that all sides are kind of leaning toward Matt Patricia. He's a guy who's had kind of a defensive coordinator-like spot with Belichick before. Obviously, it was on the defensive side of football, but he's had a lot of experience before that. Coaching under Belichick. Joe Judge was on the special team side of the ball. I think that just from what we see, just kind of, just evidence kind of just watching closely in practice, watching during the games, it's been Joe Judge has been kind of, in his ear, kind of doing the technical, you're doing a 3-step drop here, so doing a 4-step drop here, that type of thing, where Matt Patricia's been the guy with the walkie-talkie, the guy, majority of the time, who's been sitting in the plays, been collaborating with Bill Belichick as far as, making tweaks like that, which we can see. So I think that's the way we're headed. But again, it wouldn't surprise me at all if either guy actually gets the actual title and then Belichick wants to have more input this year than maybe he did under, with the Bengals here, as far as, dictating and steering how Mac Jones develops in the second year, which is obviously a big, important year for him. But again, it's kind of fits the mold of you never know what to expect from Bill Belichick, and this is another example of him doing that.
Do you have pads of your own for Friday's game? Do you have any kind of protective gear? Be safe out there, Kyle.
Yeah, thankfully I'll be high in the sky. Probably drinking a third or fourth bottle of water by then if something happens. But we'll be watching from afar with my binoculars. So I'll let you know what happens.
You bring up a great point about the condensed preseason and how that could ultimately affect tensions running high as we head into the regular season. Thank you so much for taking a couple minutes to be with us.
Anytime, Carolyn.